beautiful treat. You and me, oh, happy we'll be. I love to be beside.
The beach is empty now, but nearly 50 years earlier, this deserted strip of sand was the set for Some Like It Hot, a film whose reputation would only grow in the intervening decades.
How about that guy?
Yeah, look, Daphne, hands off. I saw him first.
Sugar, let me give you a little advice, dear. If I were a girl, and I am, I'd watch my step.
If I'd been watching my step, I never would have met him.
Nothing matched our movie. Nothing. It was original. It was outrageous. Took a lot of courage to do.
In all the golden years of Hollywood, there is no comedy any better than this one.
More Billy Wilder films are in current lists of the great American films than perhaps any other American director.
The only thing I now know is that it was a huge success worldwide, that we knew we had a good picture. We are surprised that it has lived on after all those years.
Meeting Billy Wilder was one of the great perks of having made L.A. Confidential. He saw that picture and called me up and invited me down to his office, which, needless to say, was a great call to get, because Billy Wilder not only was an extraordinary writer-director that I admired as an adult, but he was also one of those filmmakers who first made me aware that there was somebody behind the camera telling the story. This lot was originally the home of Mary Pickford and Douglas Fairbanks when they started United Artists. Then it became the Goldwyn Studio, eventually Warner Hollywood. Billy Wilder first worked here when he was working for Howard Hawks on Ball of Fire, and reportedly it was seeing Mary Pickford visiting the studio at night that gave him the idea for Sunset Boulevard. This whole parking area right here were sound stages, stages 3 and 4, where sets were built for The Apartment, Irma la Douce, Witness for the Prosecution, and of course Some Like It Hot. The stage burned down in 1974. Billy was out at Universal doing the remake of The Front Page at the time, and he sent Audrey over here to check out the damage to his office. His offices were right up here on the second floor, the last 2 windows on the left there. And he said to her, "What happened to the wall? How's the wall?" And she said, "What wall?" Because the stage had collapsed and debris had gone right into the building, not only taking out the windows, but taking out the whole wall, and it was a disaster. Everything he had in there was lost. This was always known as the Writers' Building, still is, although I don't know that there are that many writers left in here. These first rooms here are editing rooms, and on In Her Shoes, we use them for rehearsals. And Shirley MacLaine, the first day she walked in, she exclaimed to me and Cameron Diaz and Toni Collette, she said, "This was my dressing room, and Jack's was right over there." And I'm told that Billy used to drive up and, you know, run right in that doorway up to his office. And he was there for about 18 years.
The best way I have found to describe Billy over the years is that as close as we are, I have never spent 30 seconds that were dull. And it's a true statement. He's a fascinating man. People say you have to have a sense of humor. God knows he has that. We think of a sense of humor as someone who can get a joke. That really is not a sense of humor. That's an appreciation of humor. A sense of humor is somebody who can see humor in a situation and then make it funny so that you can appreciate it. Lord knows Billy has done that for decades.
Billy Wilder was a very smart man. He had a personal characteristic that is not necessarily true for a lot of smart people, which is he trusted his audience to be smart, too.
People try their darndest because they want to please him, and he gets good results. It's always a very untense, friendly set.
His was always on the set, and always in all the post-production. I mean, Billy felt that what was important going on the set was that the script get on the screen.
When Billy and his often collaborator, I.A.L. Diamond, are really on their stick. There is never a word changed. You cannot take a word out. You cannot add a word. It's like trying to ad-lib Shakespeare.
What kind of a band is it anyway?
You gotta be under 25.
We could pass for that.
You gotta be blonde.
We could dye our hair.
And you gotta be girls.
We could. No, we couldn't.
I still have not read, in all these years, these decades that I've been fooling around in this crazy business, I have never read a comedy script. Not only better, maybe not its equal. I think that, I think it should be mandatory for young writers, for instance, when they're in a college or university or when they're starting to study. If there were a few scripts that they should really study as for dialogue, construction, etc., that would have to be number one. It's flawless, I think.
The idea that Tony Curtis's character, Joe or Josephine, is going to have a miraculous personality transformation is something, first of all, that's only possible in a comedy. And it's been true since the Greek and Roman comedians such as Plautus and Shakespeare.
None of that sugar. No guy is worth it.
Because you must remember that 1950s was a very conservative, politically and sexually, a very conservative decade. But things, they were a-changing, and this film was part of that change.
Shortly before the film's premiere, the powerful Catholic Legion of Decency condemned it as morally objectionable, claiming it promoted homosexuality, lesbianism, and transvestitism. The movie was banned in Kansas when United Artists refused to delete the love scene on the yacht. That same scene caused the Memphis Censorship Board to restrict viewings to adults only.
Something Like It Hot is a picture about sex. It's about sex from the title, Something Like It Hot, to the final line.
The film is revolutionary. I think that's absolutely true. And that they managed to get away with a point of view in the film that would seem in a different context totally unacceptable, and they got away with it.
The movie is not just about sex as in people having sex, but it's also about sexual attitudes, sexual roles, and of course, identity.
You're a girl. I'm a girl. I'm a girl. I'm a girl. I'm a girl.
Hi.
Get a load of that rhythm section. I'm a girl. I'm a girl. Just keep telling yourself you're a boy. You're a boy. I'm a boy. That's the boy. Yes, I'm a girl. I'm a girl. I'm a girl.
What'd you say?
I'm a very sick girl.
Oh, I better go before I catch something.
I'm not that sick.
I've got very low resistance.
If the film is anybody's, it's Marilyn's film. She's the character who everybody remembers. And if you take her out of the film and consider, for example, Mitzi Gaynor in the same role, I think you have a totally different film.
I loved working with Marilyn. An awful lot of people in an awful lot of films in her lifetime certainly had their hands full, according to them. I loved it. She was difficult. There is no question of that. But I was aware, in my mind anyhow, that it was hardly any temperament. The biggest problem was her inability really to face things, to get on the set on time. I mean, you could sit there for an eternity waiting for Marilyn. I think it was just her absolute emotional inability to face a situation.
Everybody had those kind of problems with her, because she was very hesitant and uncertain and dependent on the opinions of others, like her dramatic coach and so on and so forth. And, she had a great talent, but she was not a professional in that sense. She was a phenomenon, but she was not a trained actress in that sense.
All of a sudden, for some inexplicable reason, she lost control. Something in her life must have happened. Didn't happen on the set with us. I had a wonderful time with her.
I think first and foremost, I think that Something Like It Hot is probably the best film that she ever made. It also came at a very difficult time in her life. She was pregnant immediately before she made the movie, lost the baby. It is part of why she's so voluptuous in the film. And it came at a time in which her own personal life was in tumult, none of which, of course, is reflected in the film. The film has a magic about it, and of course that is because, in a very real way, of Billy Wilder.
Believe me, I have known actors and actresses that can come up with 6 pages of dialogue absolutely flawless. Well, Christ, you go to a French restaurant here in L.A., you know, and this guy comes up and recites 14 dishes in French and in English, never misses a vegetable, nothing. The sauces are perfect. So, my God, why don't I have actors like this, you know, who never blow a line? But that does not matter. It is of no import whatsoever. Nobody cares. What is on the screen? Does it work? Do we feel for her? Are we involved in her fate? Do we wish her well? Do we want her dead? Whatever, she was absolutely, totally unique, and there's never been anybody like her, because there were also days, I should mention that, where she went through entire scenes, you know, without blowing a line.
I come from this musical family. My mother is a piano teacher. My father was a conductor.
Where did he conduct?
On the Baltimore and Ohio.
I always thought, you know, that this girl had a great sense for dialogue. She knew where the laughs were. And she did it with a great deal of elegance, and she had that unique thing that makes a big star a big star. By that I mean women and men like her equally. There's something so totally disarming about her.
The very nature of what makes a star is magic. It's undefinable, and you only know it when you see it. And she had it. She was magic.
But you, I wanna be loved by you alone.
You view the film now through the eyes of what happened to her in the years immediately afterward. She didn't have a long time left on this earth.
Story of my life. I always get the fuzzy end of the lollipop.
She was that girl. She was Sugar Kowalski. She knew what she was. That's who she was.
As Billy would say himself if he were here to this very day, that picture wouldn't have been anything like what it is if it hadn't been for what Marilyn Monroe brought to that picture. Her performance, as difficult as it may have been to get, is really what makes the picture, and she really is just marvelous in it.
I think that Marilyn Monroe is more famous today than she was at the time of her death. And I do think that she is the definitive star of the glamorous age of Hollywood stars. I think she is, without question, the most memorable star, really, of the 20th century.
Nobody's perfect. It's not a solution to the story. What is this, the world's first Hollywood gay romance?
I tell you, I will never find another man who's so good to me.
He's going to go off and marry Joey Brown? No. Diamond and Wilder come up with this great one-liner, one of the most famous in film history.
I'm a man. Well, nobody's perfect.
And then the music comes in without a single pause. It's up and out, and you're out in the parking lot before you turn to the person you're with and say, what the hell does that mean? The implications of the story are impossible for at least the Hollywood of its day.
Nobody paid much attention to it until all of a sudden it started to erupt. And it erupted from the audience. The audience got it before anybody else.
The film wasn't taken very seriously when it came out. It wasn't taken very seriously by historians and critics, but over the years it's had a remarkable longevity.
As far as reviews went, the reviews were quite mixed. Trade reviews were good. New York Times was not good. Time was not good. But gradually, people shifted their opinions, and people who had given a bad review suddenly put it on their 10 best list.
We also sometimes remember that it did not get a single Academy Award nomination, or maybe 1 or 2, but it didn't win anything, for sure.
It got 6 or 7 nominations. Unfortunately, it appeared in a year where Ben-Hur was in the race, and Ben-Hur, I think, won, 12 or 13 awards. I think still the highest number any film has ever won. And so we kind of got left in the dust by Ben-Hur, and very unfortunately so, but the Academy made it up to Billy the following year by giving him, I guess, 3 Oscars for writing, directing, and producing The Apartment.
It was unique and different without stretching. You know, all these other films that were made with men dressing as women, they all had to make a big excuse to do that. You know, it wasn't enough to just let it alone.
The thing that was closest was a television show, like one of Tom Hanks's earliest work, Bosom Buddies it was called. And that was the closest as taking the feel of it. I saw, I think, 1 episode of it, and it was quite clear they had all done their homework.
In 1984, the legacy of Some Like It Hot was celebrated on its 25th anniversary by the San Diego Film Society and the Hotel del Coronado, with a reunion of the cast and crew and a screening of the film.
I know all of us were terribly pleased that you remembered that it was 25 years ago. It's a long time. As Marilyn Monroe says in the picture, in a scene, she says, you know, I'm 25 years old. You know, 25 years, that's a quarter of a century. Makes a girl think. Well, made me think, too, now, when you reminded me. I kind of make myself believe that was only yesterday, and we are still going at that tempo. Well, we're not.
At first, I was shocked when someone said 25th anniversary, because to me it was like yesterday. Obviously, I knew it was years ago, but I never really stopped to think it was 25 years ago that we made this film.
What makes a great movie is something that plays well, something that interests people, something that makes people forget that they are sitting in a theater, that it's all actually just two-dimensional, that it's just shadows appearing on that thing. If you partake in what is being told to you, if you are part of the story, in other words, if you can involve the audience so the audience works with you, then you've got a good picture. They care.
The American Film Institute, in their polls, chose it as the funniest film ever made. You know, what more can filmmakers want than the fact that a film has passed the test of time?
It's interesting that when the American Film Institute did this poll seeking to discover which were the 100 top comedies, Some Like It Hot came in number 1, which I'd been saying for years was the case, and Tootsie came in number 2, which I'd also been saying for years was the case, and that both are cross-dressing films.
I'd made many films, and this was the first film that was ever acclaimed like that. That meant a lot to me.
With all the good fortune I've had, and God, I've had a lot of it, there is certainly no moment, meaning no particular film, as fortunately successful as they might have been at times in my life, that could ever mean more to me, or that was more important to me, professionally, but emotionally also. It was the first time I got to work with Billy, and it's become a personal as well as a professional relationship that is extremely rewarding to me. And the picture alone, if I had never worked with Billy again, it still would rank, along with maybe a handful of others, as really important moments in my life.
I'm so thrilled that I'm in that movie, you know, and that I do a good job in it. That meant a lot to me.
And then you start asking yourself, how did I do it? And why can't I do it again? I don't know.
Gradually, it's attained much more status than anybody ever dreamed of. I mean, they were just making a funny movie. That's all.